Welcome everyone to Keyframers, the animated collaborative coding live stream where we bring imaginative user interfaces to life. I'm your host, Stephen Shaw, but you may know me as @Shashaw. Today is going to be a little bit different. First, David is out tonight, so I'm streaming solo right now. And second, I won't specifically be making an animation in this stream. Every so often, David and I are going to have some more freeform episodes like this, dubbed ImprompTuesdays. ImprompTuesdays. They won't happen every week, but whenever we have some free time or something to share, we'll start one up. Sometimes both of us, sometimes just one of us, and we hope you'll join us. For these, usually we'll cover some quick tips, work on libraries together, do some Q&As, some keyframer housekeeping, anything that may not fit in a regular episode. So getting everything set up here, so let me know in the chat if anything is not right with the levels or anything like that. Also, throughout the stream, if you have any general questions or just curious about something, feel free to ask in the chat, and I'll try to answer as we go. All right. Cool. Well, one of the first things I want to talk about is this Thursday's stream. It's actually going to be a little bit different. So before we started up Keyframers, I had signed up to do the first CodePen Houston, which is a CodePen meetup that'll be in the Houston, Texas area for all kind of like-minded devs to join and share off some work and enjoy some food. Let me go ahead and show the RSVP page here. And so that happened to have been planned on a Thursday, and the night that worked best for David and I to do Keyframers on a regular basis was Thursday. So that's a little bit of a conflict, but David and I talked through it, and we wanted to do something kind of special where we'll actually be doing not Keyframers live, but David is actually going to be giving a small talk at CodePen Houston. He's going to do kind of one of his talks that he's done before, but with a live coding demonstration. So it's going to be a really neat time for everybody that's going to be at CodePen Houston, and we want to invite you guys to join along too. So we're going to actually stream that as well. So you'll be able to join Keyframers just like every normal week, only it'll be at a slightly different time. CodePen Houston is starting at 6:30, and we'll likely have this live stream segment happening around 7. That's Central Time, GMT time. I don't know what that would be. Should be a really fun time. We're expecting a good little crowd to join us, and we'll have a fun time. So with these kind of mini episodes, the next thing I wanted to bring up is the episode numbering. If you saw on Twitter the announcement, or you're looking at the Twitch page, you'll notice that the naming is a little strange. We've got 1.1.1 for the episode number. So what David and I kind of wanted to do with that was have semantic versioning for the numbers. And what that means is, let me pull up the site here if you've never seen it before. Semantic versioning, where you have major, minor, and pat. batch episodes. So all of our kind of regular episodes are just going to be, let's see, all of our regular episodes will just fall under the minor version numbering. So if this is, geez. And let's do some nice centering here. Get everything lined up. So our very first episode was 1.0.0, and then the subsequent episode was 1.1.0, and all of our regular series will follow that kind of versioning. When we do minor episodes like this, it'll just fit right in between there as a little patch episode. And yeah, that's our clever naming system. So everything should kind of be in numeric order there, but you can follow along with the actual order of things if that seems confusing, just by following semantic versioning. Let me see. Okay, and now I just kind of had a few quick tips that I wanted to share. Some stuff that I've discovered over the past few weeks or recently that is quite interesting. First of all, I wanted to talk about Element.scrollIntoView. This is an API that I had no clue about, that really makes all of those little anchor links that you want to add to pages with just work in a really cool way. So right now I don't have any buttons or anything like that on the page, but if I rerun, notice I'm at the top here with the scroll bar. If I rerun, hey, you get that nice smooth scroll into place. And this is something that countless JavaScript libraries have been written for, and so many hours have been spent trying to solve, but it's actually built into the browser right there. It has a few options with it. You'll have to look at the MDN scroll into view. You'll have to look at that to see kind of what all of those options do. But for the most part, as long as you don't need anything super custom, that actually works really well just to smooth out a scroll. And this could be triggered by a button click or anything like that. And that's pretty cool. And the best part about it is you are just targeting the element that you want to be visible. So down here in the JavaScript, I just selected an element with document.querySelector, but this could be anything, and then triggered the scroll into view method for that. The behavior smooth triggers that nice slow scroll or animated scroll into place. And then the block and inline center settings, line that element up in the center of the viewport. I forget which does which direction and all of that, but yeah, if you follow the MDN documentation, that'll help you figure that out. So posting, I'll post a few of these things in the chat as we go. But the surprisingly cool thing about this API is it works back to IE8. So you may not get the same smooth scroll in every browser or anything like that, but just by being able to scroll to the element in older browsers, that's a huge benefit. All right, let me check a few things here as we go. Make sure nothing's blowing up. Good. Live stream seems to be going well. Okay, so Element.scrollIntoView. Check that out. If you don't look through the documentation, you might be really surprised by some of the stuff that's built into browsers these days that used to be such a pain to do. It required so much manual work. If you find yourself needing to use the documentation a lot, which I think you should, I use a small utility called Dash. That's this icon up here. If I open it up, it just gives me a nice quick search bar so I can search for any specific property that I want. Right now everything's filtered by CSS, but I can do the HTML specs, the CSS documentation, JavaScript documentation, SVG, all of those, and it pulls up, for the most part, the MDN documentation, and there's also kind of add-ons for like Vue documentation, 3JS, PHP, all those, and just having a quick shortcut to pull that up while you're working in your code editor is super handy. So that's Dash app, and I'll include a note link for that in the show notes. Just make a note for that. And the next thing I wanted to show was a little trick that I picked up talking with Innovati in the Animation at Work Slack. Tommy Hodgins is his full name. He has a lot of crazy ideas about what CSS is and what we should be doing with it, and has implemented a lot of really cool plugins that you should check out. But one of the questions he had was about using basically JSON data or arrays in CSS Vars, and that just kind of got my brain moving, and I ran a few tests here to see what that would actually do. I'll copy that into the chat. And surprisingly, it works quite well. So down in my JavaScript, I have a read CSS var function, which just uses window.getComputedStyle on an element, and then gets that property value. In this case, we're looking up a specific variable name. And then down below that, I'm using that function to return the array var of document.body, and then I'm using JSON.parse to actually turn that into real JavaScript data. So down below that, I've got the object var being pulled in, and then JSON.parse for that, and it returns an actual object. And this does need to be legitimately encoded JSON. You can't be too loose with it. I haven't tested outside of Chrome, but I suspect the more evergreen browsers will support this. And you have to be careful about your preprocessors that you use. You may need to escape those as a string, so to avoid having the browser process or the preprocessor mangle those up for you. And with there's a lot of potential with that. I haven't figured out an exact use case yet, but being able to say send over all of your color values from your CSS to be used in your JavaScript, that would be immensely helpful. even just sending data about the state with class changes from your CSS. That it opens up a lot of interesting doors, but someone a little smarter than I will need to dive into that to find a realistic use for it. And next thing kind of came from another Animation at Work Slack. If you're not familiar with that, slack.animationatwork.com. It's a great community of web developers primarily focused on animation. If you're ever in need of help, or just like to talk development and animation, then that's a great place to go. I got a question. Well, somebody posted a question that I ended up taking responsibility for unknown reasons, and they wanted to kind of talk about animating border with this kind of gradient effect. Now, the original one they sent, sorry, I'm forgetting who that was off the top of my head, but that'll be on the details of this pin, who I forked it from, and what they were doing. They were basically changing the border image in just a keyframe declaration, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the browser actually doesn't animate that fluidly. It was treating it like discrete steps and wasn't actually transitioning between them. It was just stepping through them, essentially. So I proposed a different solution for him using ClipPath, our old friend. So this does bring up some issues with certain browsers, but this is the perfect case to wrap everything in an @supports declaration, @supports ClipPath, and if it does support that, then hey, we're golden. Let's see, something's wrong about my, let's see, does that work? No. Yeah, anyway, @supports is a handy little toggle so that you can just have kind of your default styles that are going to work on any browser that supports those properties, and then the @support statement will allow you to kind of filter out browsers that don't support specific things like ClipPath, and allows you to target just those. So anyway, the ClipPath here, I've got a border variable to give me a specific width for the border, in this case 4 pixels. I've got a negative margin to bring this gradient border element outside of the parent element, this parallelogram, which is position relative and has that lovely skew Y to make it at that angle. And then with my ClipPath, I've got some calc declarations in here that basically go all the way around the outer edge of the element to about here, and then come in and go back around this way, and then come all the way down and back up. And that allows us to basically clip out the background. So you can see what that looks like without the ClipPath, which is still a cool effect, but the ClipPath makes it appear like a border. And the actual background animation I'm achieving using a pseudo element. So I've got a before here with the linear gradient. That's actually being overwritten later on. Position absolute, top left, height 100%. And then down here, I've got it 400% width. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm actually moving the pseudo element instead of animating the background. So I'm using translate X to move it from negative 50% to 0%. And that gives that nice movement. And then the linear gradient basically repeats and loops back to the initial value so that it's a seamless loop as it moves all the way through. That's always a nice little trick to set up your animations to repeat smoothly when you're using infinite values. But anyway, this was a super cool effect. I really liked what that person was doing, and border animation has always been something that has been traditionally tricky, and I even wrote an article on CSS tricks last year about trying to animate border width and some of the challenges that come along with that, and some more in-depth methods for how to overcome the oddities with that and to try and make things performant. So that's worth a look if you like animating border, or if you like just fun CSS challenges. Let's see. Next thing on my list, I wanted to just talk a little bit more about SplittingImage, that library that we used in the last episode to create the kind of sliced up image drop-in effect. This is just a really small library, 1.5 kilobytes when it's minimized, that basically creates a bunch of duplicate elements for an image, so that you can use those duplicate elements with a little bit of styling to create all sorts of cool image slicing effects. I showed this demo in the last stream, but I think that's when the stream started having some issues, so just wanted to show that again. These slices are pretty easy to set up and animate when you're doing normal kind of effects like this, and then you can even do some nth child kind of targeting to create staggered effects like this. The library supports where, let me see, the library supports a data image attribute that allows you to have a different image added to the slices than an image that's actually in there. So you can have these kind of two different states here if you wanted, and create some cool transition or slideshow-ish effects. And the library also supports doing grid kind of layouts there, if you can see that. And yeah, that one's a little better for showing off grid. And I have some fancy transition duration tricks happening here to prevent it from looping back when the cursor goes off, but it can be set up pretty easily. The cool thing is it also works with just background colors. If you wanted to do a scene transition or something like that, you can easily set that up. Down here, just empty split just has a background color. The CSS for it overall, like for creating the transitions, is pretty straightforward and simple. The math was a little fun to figure out in the actual library CSS that you need to include, which is super small. But I basically have, for each cell, one element with a child element inside of it. The parent cell is the correct size of what you're wanting to do, and then the inner inner cell is sized up to be the full width and height, so that you get just a piece of that image contained within that parent cell there. And this actually opens up a lot of possibilities if you get creative with your math. One, for instance, is doing circular image slices. This is a lot tougher to set up, and this demo is very complicated because of that. But eventually when I do a full release of this, I will be sure to include these kinds of examples to show you how to accomplish these kinds of splits. That's so satisfying. And again, this is all CSS, so it's super easy to trigger on hover, on state changes, class changes, all that kind of stuff. And you can even do some diagonal slicing. This is kind of my test ground for working out some of the math for that, and trying to get things right no matter the size here. A bunch of different techniques I was working on, but a few stable ones here. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of great possibilities with that that I think you'll enjoy playing around with. I'll try to clean this up and include some actual documentation here soon, so that you can get into it and start enjoying it. And then let's see, getting ready to wrap up here. Just wanted to talk about last week's episode. Very sorry about the stream quality. If you saw my tweet this morning, I had a technician come out, and he actually discovered that there were some squirrels that had been chewing on our cable line. So those squirrels had caused some issues where I was having a pretty good connection overall, but it would just drop out and cause all those kind of lags in the stream. But the technician ran a new line, and we should be good to go on that. So hopefully this one has been solid. I've been watching the stream stats, and it seemed to be pretty stable. So hopefully that's a good sign for the future. Don't forget this Thursday, we've got that kind of different setup with David doing a talk and some live coding for CodePen Houston. And let's see. And last thing I wanted to talk about before signing off is the Keyframers Patreon. If you're not familiar with Patreon, it's a really cool platform for basically any type of content creator that has kind of an ongoing creation process. So like comic artists, YouTubers, streamers, all those kinds of people use this platform to receive ongoing donations from fans. And this is something that David and I set up to allow us to, continue doing Keyframers week to week with some monetary incentive for that, but also to just help us support the stream, because it requires a rather intricate setup. If you could see what's around me right now, I've got many screens and lights and microphones to make this all possible, and David's got some of the same stuff going on. So we'd love your support on Patreon. If you like what we do, if you're just a fan of our work in general, this is a great place to go and support us. A lot of this is just going into us making the stream better. We recently reached the second goal here, if you can see that. Our very first goal was making us officially professional by getting us $1. And the second goal here is for $50 for having special guests collaborating with us on stream. So we don't have anyone booked just yet, but we're in talks with some people to get them to join us for some live episodes and have have a blast with more than just David and I coding and animation. I'm sure that's going to be a recipe for disaster in a lot of scenarios, but it'll be a fun disaster for you to join us on. So anyway, if you like what we do and want to see more of it, Patreon is a great way to make that happen. So it's Patreon, patreon.com/keyframers, and we'll be posting exclusives and things like that in there as we go on, and that'll just help us expand the show even more. So yeah, that's all I've got for ImprompTuesday, our very first ImprompTuesday, and it's been fun. Don't forget the different setup with CodePen Houston happening this Thursday. So David's going to be live streaming his talk for y'all, and I'll be hosting the CodePen Houston. So anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thank you for joining Keyframers. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.